Hello guys, welcome back to another weekend, which means one thing, it's time for another episode of VGC Off The Record and a big old chat about the games industry. My name is Steven McInerney and I'm your host today, and of course I've been joined by two of the busiest people in the games industry, the tired old hack himself, Chris Scullion. Chris, how you doing, my friend? You good?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good, can't complain. All happy.
I'm loving the rotating backgrounds yet again. Another. Are you going to settle them on one day?
Yeah, I think I'll settle with this one.
We should put you on like a rotating stage.
I'll just kind of turn as I talk all the time. I'll stick with this. I think I've settled.
It's
now.
good, man. It's good. There's so much going on that it's one of those things you watch it and you want to root through everything that's going on there, but it looks absolutely wonderful. And of course, we are here alongside Andy Rumson, the head honcho over at VGC. You got a Starbucks on the go there, man. Just sneaking Starbucks.
Well, I don't know. This probably came in some sort of gift package, didn't it? This Starbucks mug, but it's big. Whatever vessel in my house holds the most coffee, that's what gets used.
I'm on brand today, man. I'm being a
good.
good corporate
I
show.
don't have a VGC mug, but I suppose you don't get VGC soft drinks, so I suppose I'm not
I love that you drink an Iron Brew. I love it. I
walking stereotype.
I'm all for stereotypes. They're wonderful things. Anyway, guys, this is VGC, and every Friday we go off the record to deliver you the most considered, most informative takes on all the big stories from the world of video games. And if you're a fan of this and you like looking at our faces, don't forget we do upload every Friday afternoon on VGC's YouTube channel. So you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button. And if that's not your thing and you want to listen on your go while you're doing your housework or going to work or whatever, you can find us as an audio podcast on all the major podcast providers. So you've got no excuse to miss us, basically. And this obviously is going to be a very, very packed show. There's loads and loads and loads going on this week. These are your headlines for today. The Switch has now shipped almost 85 million units following a record year for Nintendo. Of course, as well, the second story will be around that big old epic court battle, I guess. Epic court battle between Epic and Apple. I shouldn't use the word epic there, it was a terrible choice. There's loads to unpack in that, and also we'll be looking at Andy's favourite subject, of course, Call of Duty, and specifically the news that Sledgehammer will be building the next release for next gen according to Activision. And finally, at the end, which should be interesting given these guys' histories, official PlayStation magazine unfortunately has become the last official games magazine to essentially, I've messed that up entirely. Finally, after 33 years, the last official games magazine has published its final issue, which is official PlayStation magazine, which we'll get onto later on. But for now, though, we're going to start with the news about the Switch shipping almost 85 million units following a record year for Nintendo. I'll read some from this report over on VGC, of course. Lifetime Switch shipments were 84.59 million units as of March the 31st, 2021. Which marked the end of Nintendo's fiscal year, up 4.27 million units from 79.87 million as of December 31st, 2020. There's a lot of numbers, but just hang on in there with me. Nintendo said on Thursday that the fourth quarter hardware sell-through to consumers exceeded the record high posted in quarter four of last year, and that global cumulative sales, as opposed to shipments, totaled over 81 million units. They're doing well, basically, doing really, really well, and of course, it's been propped up by some familiar names. Sales phenomenon Animal Crossing New Horizons was a standout title, selling 20.85 million units, which is quite frankly insane, followed by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, still at over 10 million units, Super Mario 3D All-Stars at 9.01 million, Ring Fit Adventure going strong as well, doesn't surprise me given the pandemic actually, at 7.38 million, and Mario 3D World, Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, which was only released on February the 12th, sold 5.5 million units in a month and a half, which is quite frankly insane once again. The big thing for this, though, is that Nintendo shipped 28.83 million Switch units in its last full fiscal year and said on Thursday that it expects to ship a further 25.5 million in the current year ending March 2022, which see the system overtake the Wii to become Nintendo's best-selling home console to date. Guys, a lot to unpack there.
I think you need to lie down now, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to drink my official VGC mug as you unpack all this. I mean, what does this mean for Nintendo now? I mean, obviously they're going from strength to strength. They've really benefited from this past year, particularly Animal Crossing and the hype around that, and obviously the legacy titles such as Mario Kart and all the Mario brands and all. Obviously, it's been the Nintendo Mario celebrations this year as well. Is this the norm now for Nintendo? Or is this one particularly exceptionally good year that may be hard to build on, Andy?
Well, it does look like I mean, there was a lot of concern last year when particularly Animal Crossing kind of kicked off, came out right at the kind of countries going into lockdown, social restrictions, etc. And I know there was a lot of apprehension within these big corporations about how long this wave would last. Like, I think they've been quite conservative in their forecast, predicting that it's all going to come crashing down. But I mean, obviously, as you rightly say, Nintendo's still riding the wave. I think if you kind of dig down into the numbers, though, the really interesting thing about their kind of record year is how it's seemingly driven, as you would expect, by new players. So, for example, last year was I think game sales were up by almost a third on the year before in Europe, Australia, and a couple of other markets, which is based on GSD data. So those are the kind of the regions that they cover. However, sales of new games dropped year on year, which obviously, when you kind of dig into that data, it kind of suggests that is new or returning players going to coming, buying a Switch or buying any console that they can get their hands on, frankly, in the kind of the current market. Now, this is backed up by Nintendo's own sales, game sales that they kind of put out alongside their results this week. So for the year ending March 31, 2021, only 2 games, new games, are in their top 10 sellers.
Yeah.
That's compared to 5 the year before and 6 the year before that. And you could also, obviously, if you wanted to be cynical, those 2 new games are Mario 3D All-Stars, which is a compilation of 3 old games, and 3D World, Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, which is obviously a kind of a bolstered version of the Wii U title.
Yeah.
There are other new releases from last year. Clubhouse Games, Paper Mario and the Origami King, Hyrule Warriors, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. They're like kind of languishing at the bottom 20. I mean, that's not. There's a lot of reasons that's the case, right? I mean, obviously, the story here is not that their new releases have been crap. The story is that legacy sales have exploded because of the reasons that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
However, you do have to acknowledge that it was a slow release year for Nintendo last year. I think they released less than 10 first-party games. As you just heard there, a lot of those were Wii U ports that have kind of filled a hole, perhaps. And the important data on that point is that even based on their pre-pandemic year, their last year, kind of ending last March, it would have been the same result. Like they would have had 2 new games. 2 of these games would have got into their top 10. So I guess you can debate the merits of that.
You talked a lot about new consumers, basically, and I can only talk anecdotally, and it's weird because obviously New Horizons came out just before the end of the fiscal year, so it was March the 20th in 2020, so it was just before obviously the next fiscal year, which we're mainly talking about, but I wonder how much, I can only talk anecdotally once again, but I wonder how much that played into the new, all the new customers, because I know so many people who barely even played a game before, especially like, for example, partners of friends or whatever, who had a Switch Lite just playing Animal Crossing throughout when they were furloughed, doing nothing other than that. We bought a second Switch in my household just because we wanted to play Animal Crossing at the same time. I wonder how many people did that. And I also think as well, we look at the sales of that, I think it's the second best-selling Switch game already now, just over a year, which is, quite frankly, once again, it's incredible. Am I reaching a little bit, Chris, to say that maybe there's been a massive, because it was a massive, huge thing. We had like politicians in America, didn't we? Like tweeting about it and all that kind of stuff, and we saw it was insane coverage of it. Has it been a New Horizons bounce? Is that an oversimplification?
I don't think it's oversimplification. I mean, obviously there'll be other factors as well, but it's certainly a large one. Like again, I can only speak anecdotally, but. Not since I was at the official Nintendo magazine have I had like kind of friends and family members just randomly getting in touch with me to ask about a game, and it's been Animal Crossing. Like, not since the Wii first came out, and I've had at the time I had loads of people saying, oh, this Wii thing, how can I get one, blah blah blah. And now suddenly I'm getting like my cousins getting in touch with me saying, oh, my daughter wants to visit your Animal Crossing island because I told her that you've wrote about games. And I'm like, right, okay, so yeah, it's the first time in a long time that people I know have actually kind of got in touch with me to talk about the games, other than my kind of gaming kind of circles, which to me is the big kind of anecdotal kind of sign that this is gone beyond just kind of your typical big game release, and has become like a kind of popular culture phenomenon. If you excuse me, sounded a bit wanky.
How did they capitalise on this now? Because one of the reports suggests that they wanted to sell another 25.5 million by, I think it was March next year, that's a lot, man. That's an awful lot, which obviously would take it in excess of the Wii. Are we expecting any big plans that not have been revealed? Is it the Switch Pro? Is it Breath of the Wild 2? What do you think it's going to be, Chris? Is it possible? Are they reaching a bit too far here?
It's got to be the Switch Pro, surely. I mean, this has been... Again, we don't know. I'm saying that surely as if I'm leaking something, but like the
breaking news
confirmed. But you've got to assume that if they're wanting to shift another 25 million, and unless they've got a bombshell waiting for E3 or something like that, I don't see another game doing what Animal Crossing did. I don't know if they're expecting the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes to somehow get a massive new batch of buyers in, or whether Breath of the Wild 2 is actually planned for the end of the year and we don't know yet, and that's going to be the big reveal at E3. But something big has got to be on the way for them to assume that that's going to happen, because it can't keep that momentum going if there's nothing big planned. So my guess would be a Switch Pro bumping those figures up. Are
you still expecting big Zelda celebrations, Andy? Because obviously the 35th anniversary kind of just passed quietly, really. We had the Skyward Sword remaster, and that was it.
I mean, to answer your question, how do they continue this momentum? Well, they keep selling stuff to those same kind of core audience. I've seen it time and time again. I mean, even the Wii U, even though it kind of bombed in terms of its overall install base, that install base bought a lot of stuff. I mean, the attach rate for some of these games was unheard of. You've got this kind of established large audience on Switch now, a lot of them will go and buy a better spruced up Switch, especially if you have a strong software lineup. Now, I think it's very clear that the Pro's coming at this point. The only question mark is when it's going to come, just because of the uncertainty in the market in terms of production. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk about this global shortage of semiconductors. But Mochizuki over on Bloomberg, who's broken a lot of the stories about the Switch Pro, seems pretty adamant that it's coming out later this year, and I know he's a very, very well connected journalist, so I would take him on his word for that. And they also kind of reported recently in one of his stories that Nintendo was also reserving a strong software lineup for that. I mean, they've obviously, we've just talked about how they've had a very slow release year last year. You have to wonder whether the result of that will be a big bounce back when all of this stuff that supposedly has been, delayed by the pandemic kind of arrives, and there is no better game to launch. There's no better game to launch a Switch Pro with than Breath of the Wild 2, right? There just isn't. And I think, like we talked about on a previous episode of this show, whenever Nintendo do these re-releases, they need the early adopters to buy them, right? They need them to be more engaged. So it usually comes with a very, very core lineup of games. Like they had Majora's Mask 3D for one of the 3D remasters, or Samus Returns and stuff like that. Super core games. So I think for core Nintendo fans, it's going to be a really, really good 12 months.
Yeah, and I think we'll know by E3. I mean, I can't imagine anything bigger personally at E3. I mean, there is potentially bigger things, but I mean, if Nintendo drop the Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2, they pretty much win it in most people's eyes, because it's a double whammy. New hardware, new software, one of the most biggest IPs. Go on, Chris.
At the risk of kind of throwing a span or mixing things up a bit here, do we think
you mix it up, man? You mix it up. Go for it.
Do we maybe, if wildest dreams, think maybe Mario Kart?
They. I mean, there's a lot of talk about that, isn't there?
I mean, it's been a while, and you would assume if they were planning on sticking with 8 Deluxe, you would have expected some DLC by now. The fact that because it continues to sell,
it's Nintendo, isn't it?
Yeah, but the fact it continues to sell, and you're thinking, well, if they're not supporting it, maybe it's because, I mean, when did Mario Kart 8 come out? Like
2014, 2013, 2014.
So it's
you're talking 7 years.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm just saying that just to.
You just be ready for new Super Mario Kart Deluxe 8. It's going to happen. New Super Mario Kart Deluxe 8.
I want Smash Kart. I want Super Smash Kart.
Yeah. Super Smash Kart, wow, that'd be wonderful, wouldn't it? Wonderful indeed. Second story of the day. There's go from like dreaming about stuff like that to some serious court battles. There's so much coming out over this Epic versus Apple court battle, and these are a selection of the headlines that you'll find over on VideoGamesChronicle.com, of course, written by these wonderful people sat alongside me here. Basically, there's just loads. This is a rundown of them now. Microsoft apparently has never made a profit from the sale of an Xbox console. Not apparently, it's been confirmed in court on Wednesday. Also, elsewhere, Epic CEO Tim Sweeney, he was as chatty you'd expect during a court case, says Stadia has been very significantly scaled back, but Sweeney also rejected suggestions that Stadia has now been shut down entirely. Tim Sweeney also claimed that Sony is the only platform holder that charges for free for crossplay. And that they demand royalties for any lost revenue share. Absolutely loads going on. I feel like I've missed one out there, but either way, there's an awful lot to unpack. Andy. This must be fascinating for you, sat there at home, where you're watching all these headlines come out. There's just so much to go on about.
Well, it's been fascinating for anyone in kind of games, isn't it? It's like Christmas with all of this redacted stuff coming out.
More court battles in gaming. That's what we all want, right? For the news stories.
I mean, the games industry is so unnecessarily secretive, right? I've always had a bee in my bonnet about that. I think the secrecy around video games is ridiculous. And it's kind of hilarious watching all of these companies scramble to redact stuff. Okay, there's kind of stuff that is kind of sensitive to their business, but most of it is just really trivial. I mean, the attention that is being garnered most from this is around like funny emails and stuff. You know, it's like the Sony cross-platform thing was interesting. The cross-play, which you remember was a big thing last gen, because Microsoft are in this position where they've almost got nothing to lose, or certainly on Xbox One they had nothing to lose. So, you know, obviously they've taken this position of championing gamers' issues, even if it's not the most business savvy thing to do in certain regards. So they were pushing crossplay. Like, hey, PlayStation, come play with us, blah, blah, which they definitely wouldn't have done the generation before when they were on top. So Sony were very hesitant to that, if you remember. And I think someone in Fortnite accidentally found out that they were in a game with PlayStation players or something. Like, they accidentally turned it on. I don't think there's anyone sat here right now who thinks they accidentally did it, now that we see the emails. But so there's kind of like some insight in these emails to how Sony was very, very hesitant to doing this. They're pushing back for a long period of time and there is, I think the major talking point is that there is allegedly some sort of business arrangement in place where if there are more kind of microtransaction payments on another platform and they're playing more on PlayStation, I think I might have got that slightly wrong, then Sony will want to charge for this, basically. So essentially, in layman's terms, it's like they want to charge extra for this. I mean, on top of that, there's, as you said, the Stadia. You're the only one I've heard call Stadia Stadia. You work in sport.
That's a very good point. Entirely. I think it's because that's how little I give a shit about them. So it reminds me of
it's like Ocado. It's like Stadia is who you get your groceries delivered from, right?
Look, I've got a mum who says.
Is it because
my mum says Nestles instead of Nestle? You know what I mean? I'm from Manchester. We don't talk proper up here.
Is it because the pandemic's lasted so long? It's been ages since you've been in a football stadium.
A football stadium, man. I'm missing stadiums. Yeah, like what's a stadium? What's a stadium? I don't even know, man. All I know is live streaming illegal football matches, which definitely doesn't happen for anyone watching this. That's all I know these days, anyway. But the Stadia. Why did I say that?
Those are like another really funny talking point from it. Like they've constantly been dunking on Stadia. Like it's just the trial's been going on for like 5 days now, and it just constantly comes up. There's this like undercurrent of like Google abuse, like in whoever they're cross-examining. Epic and Apple's counsel are just constantly like, so is Stadia, is that still a thing? Is that still running? And they get them to confirm it, like stuff like that.
Just sat there mocking him during the court case, but yeah, Stadia.
It's like in all of this, these two big kind of like $1 billion companies, the disagreements they have, the one thing that they can agree on is that they hate Stadia by the sound of it. So that's been really, really interesting. And the other probably other kind of niche but really interesting thing that came out of this was did you see the Xbox internal review?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. That was really interesting, wasn't it? I'll read that out actually now.
By the way, I want to commission this guy. Whoever wrote this review is really good.
And yeah, he is pretty. Yeah, well, it'll probably be actually Phil Spencer. I reckon he's just sat there playing it at home himself. I'll read the article. It says court documents published as part of Epic Games versus Apple legal case have offered a rare insight into Microsoft's competitive analysis of one of Sony's flagship games, The Last of Us Part 2. I'll get to the good bit basically. This is the Xbox internal review that states that The Last of Us Part 2 sets a new bar for what we should hope to be able to achieve going into a new generation of consoles. It carries on saying, Last of Us Part 2 is the exceedingly rare video game where what it accomplishes in moving forward the art of narrative storytelling in video games as a medium ultimately outweighs whether or not everyone likes it or even everyone has fun playing it. That said, we loved it. I had a great time playing it and find ourselves still thinking about its characters and stories after finishing the playthrough. They went on and on. They said the visual quality and attention to detail in The Last of Us 2 is absolutely best in class in basically every area, and the overall presentation is significantly ahead of anything that other teams have produced on console and PC. We have been frequently stunned by the quality of the game's visuals. This is an advert for Sony, isn't it? I can see why they didn't want this leaked. He carried on saying, something that seldomly happens these days. It's even more impressive considering that the game features 2 separate player characters with different groups of allies in different locations, along with flashback sequences taking place years before. It did go on to criticise the gunplay, which was interesting. You can read the whole thing, of course. I'll put a link in the description on this video. He said Naughty Dog still can't, shots fired, literally, still can't seem to make decent gun combat in any of their games, and this one is no exception. I slightly disagree with that, interestingly. So luckily for them, it fits in with the game's overall theme and pushes the player towards using stealth over head-on. I mean, they're not wrong, really. It's a bloody brilliant game. It's an incredible game. I was expecting this to come out, but I'm happy it kind of did. It's fascinating to see that you sit there.
It's funny seeing the fans' reactions to it as well, especially the kind of the fanboys, if you will, because it seems like even something like this, they can't resist still finding the one thing to complain about. So you would imagine a lot of PlayStation fans would be going, "This is fantastic!" Like we've got Xbox themselves saying one of our games is amazing, but instead a lot of them have just kind of focused on that gunplay. What the one paragraph that says, "Yeah, this is one of the greatest games we've ever played." Gunplay's a wee bit shit, and they're going, "What? What are you talking about?" It's like, hey.
We all know you're anti-PlayStation, Chris. We know that. We gathered that last week.
No, that's right. I was accused of being anti-PlayStation.
The PlayStation hoodie was just too on the nose. You need to try harder, man. Try harder. I
think the interesting thing for me about this story, though, beyond the actual fanboy stuff, is it's a rare insight, obviously, into this internal analysis, like competitive analysis that is very, very common. So I saw a lot of people online who were surprised that this even happens, but it is very, very common, right? And in a lot of cases, the guys doing these might even be ex-journalists themselves who kind of go on and earn some real money kind of doing it professionally for these companies. Like, obviously mock reviews are a part of the development process.
Yeah.
When you're fairly close to finishing your game, you will go and get some mock reviews done. There are companies that do these, kind of established companies. Like in the UK, there are 1 or 2 companies that do most of the mock reviews for the kind of games firms in the UK, and they're all kind of veteran journalists who do that stuff. In some cases, like still acting journalists who like recuse themselves from doing it properly, like if they have a deal to review mock reviews for EA's games, for example. These are quite common, that there will be reviews done to publish internally in companies that you don't see, because they can then act on them, if that makes sense. I mean, I know this is not necessarily, this is more like almost like I don't want to say a vanity thing, but obviously this review is part of some sort of executive update, like deck that they've sent round that's come out months after the game's come out.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much like technical use this review has, but I mean, obviously it's a fascinating insight into something that probably happens every single month, certainly within Xbox.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating as well, because I mean it's interesting to see how the Last of Us 2 critics react to that. I know a lot of people were I think a little bit childish at times, and people can like what they want to, but I mean I think they were spot on in that little review that regardless of what we think of the story, it was a masterpiece
100%,
in terms of the way
it was spot on.
I mean it's clearly utterly a masterpiece, whether we like the narrative points or not. And do you know what, I need to replay that. Is there going to be I've been waiting though, I can't be the only one who's been waiting for a boost. Yeah, do you reckon, you don't, you maybe do know, maybe don't know. Is it? Do you reckon it's anytime soon?
I imagine, and this is speculation. I know there's definitely one coming. I mean, I heard that last year. It is conspicuous by its absence, right? Every bloody game's got this big boost, apart from their amazing flagship game. Even Ghost of Tsushima has a pretty decent boost on PS5. My guess would be if that Last of Us remaster is fairly far along, then they'll bundle them both, especially if it's around the HBO show as well. That's what I mean. To be completely honest, I can't even remember if that might have been within Jason Schreier's original piece for Bloomberg saying that. So, double check, see if I've robbed that wholesale, but that'd be my guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised the slightest. I remember a few months back, maybe just a couple of months ago, pretty much every shop in the UK at least suddenly all of a sudden dropped the price for The Last of Us Part 2 down to like 20 quid. I remember that. Yeah, and I was like, okay, so I bought it then. So I was like, but I think I might have tweeted at one point saying if I put my cynical hat on, I wouldn't be surprised if they were getting a lot of people to buy it so they can then bring out this remaster and not have people feel bad when saying, wait a minute, I just paid 50 quid for this and now you're re-releasing it. Like if they get a lot of people spending 20 quid on it and then they say, okay, now here's a PS5 one, they won't feel pissed off that they're not getting like a free upgrade, which is what people would.
It wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. Third story of the day, and we're on to Andy's special. Your mastermind subject, I reckon it would be, man. If you had to choose one thing, it'd be Call of Duty these days. Basically, the new Call of Duty from Sledgehammer is built for next gen. Activision says probably not the biggest surprise, but it sounds encouraging anyway for Call of Duty fans. Excuse me. Activision Blizzard has confirmed that Sledgehammer Games is leading developer 2021's premium Call of Duty. President and Chief Operating Officer Daniel Allegri, I hope I've pronounced that right. I'm pretty certain he's Juventus' chairman. I've always said during the company's first quarter earnings call on Tuesday. That's a niche reference in a video games podcast. Said during the company's first quarter earnings call on Tuesday. In particular, we are very excited for this year's premium Call of Duty release. Development is being led by Sledgehammer Games, and the game is looking great and on track for its fall release. This is a built for next generation experience with stunning visuals across campaign, multiplayer, and cooperative modes of play, designed to both integrate with and enhance the existing Call of Duty ecosystem. We look forward to sharing more details with the community soon. Andy, enlighten us. What does this mean for the Call of Duty community? Are we going to see a big remastered Warzone as well and all that kind of stuff?
I'm not expecting a amazing Call of Duty this year for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Pandemic. People kind of making these big annual games are going to be the ones who are hurt the most, right? I think also Sledgehammer were supposedly originally working on a different game. In fact, I know they were working on a different game. They were working on... Not only were they supposed to be working on last year's Call of Duty, but obviously everything got botched up and Treyarch got brought in and then it ended up being Black Ops Cold War, which was half Raven, half Treyarch. Sledgehammer was supposed to be doing that, and they were also working on like a Call of Duty like kids game. I mean, I probably really described that badly.
That's interesting.
It's not like a kids game, but you imagine like a different audience.
Is it called Fortnite by any chance?
Well, yeah, exactly what I was about to say. Imagine like Fortnite. If they were working on a game that was like Call of Duty for the Fortnite audience. So I think they've sort of merged it a little bit with Warzone, because Warzone now, they've jumped the shark a little bit. Like, you can buy guns that are on fucking fire and stuff, and you can play as like a wizard with a gun that's on fire. And that's it's about to get more mental as well. By the way, with the mid-season update for this season, they're adding some crazy 80s stuff that's going to be headlines.
Can you leak any of it? Can you say any of it?
No, I don't.
Oh, you want to.
I don't want to.
Think of the title of the video, man. Think of the title.
That's going to be like headlines when they do the mid-season update with the crazy 80s stuff that they're adding. So I think Warzone's leaning. I think Warzone is leaning into that already, like, to compensate. But they were at one point working on a like Fortnite-ish, like, I guess skews a little younger Call of Duty. And then for whatever reason they didn't. I guess the kids just bloody play Call of Duty anyway, right? They know that. I mean, we did an article on CBG years ago where we had like some people behind the scenes who were saying that they actively know that in the playground people are talking about Call of Duty and stuff. But that is a different story. This year's Call of Duty. Last I heard, it's not. I don't really get the kind of the kind of like pissing the bed stories that I've seen about it's delayed and it's not going to have this and it's not going to have that. Last I heard, it's going to have all the modes and what have you. But I would still, if I was a Call of Duty fan, I would be expecting more like a Cold War type game, like last year's game. I don't know if you guys played Call of Duty, but the campaign was great by Raven.
I enjoyed it.
It was very short, and it was very, very efficiently made. Like for replayability and kind of an open structure. They were very, very clever in how they made that campaign. They made the best of their resources. But I think the overall package compared to previous games, I think the fans were a little bit disappointed. And certainly the Warzone incorporation was lackluster at the start. And that is the gist of that. This is that Warzone came out, last March. And, at that point when it was coming out, as I've said previously, there was no guarantee that the next game wasn't just going to bring its own battle royale in again, which I think they were planning at one point. It's just as that game exploded, it's now taken over Activision. I mean, they've said it in their financial results this week, but I tweeted last week I'd been told that every studio in Activision is now working on Call of Duty in some capacity. Like, it's all about Call of Duty. Call of Duty is bigger than it's ever been, unbelievably, because obviously you think 10 years ago it was a phenomenon, like the early Modern Warfare Black Ops days. It's now even bigger because they've unlocked this audience, the free-to-play audience. Everyone is playing Call of Duty, and they can go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So I would expect probably another fairly lackluster game this year just because of the time span they have to produce it, but more meaningful Warzone integration. I think there'll be some really, really smart Warzone stuff from what I hear.
I mean, the big question for me is, I want to know, Chris, what 80s gimmicks do you want from this? I would like this update, man.
I would like a boombox that acts like some sort of remote bomb. So you place the boombox down, stand back, and when people go by, it goes boom. Lets out some
a literal boombox.
A literal boombox. Oh,
there we go.
See if that happens now.
If
that actually happens, that looks like I've leaked it. But I've actually got zero idea. But that's
Andy's
perfect.
Like, scrub the video, cancel the video, cancel the video. He's known to be quiet.
You got to think headlines, mate. No one's going to go, they put a boombox in Call of Duty.
But it's a boombox.
Knight Rider.
Literally
Get Knight Rider.
Oh, mate.
Knight Rider in there, man. Knight Rider. What else is from the 80s? I'm from the 80s. Who else?
What else is from the 80s?
There's a lot from the 80s, man. That are like, I want a bit of Human League in the background banging away.
That's a pretty wide-ranging question.
They've already got all that. The soundtrack is incredible now. Fair play.
I've not played it for a few weeks.
They've been pumping 80s tracks in since Christmas. Like, it's like Aha and stuff like that. Like, whenever you get in a vehicle now, it's like 80s as fuck.
I've not been on it.
It's basically Call of Duty
for a few months.
It's just Call of Duty Vice City, basically, at this point.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
So,
which is an incredible thing. We're all sold on that. And finally today, after 33 years, the last official games magazine has published its final issue. Official PlayStation Magazine UK to become Play from its next issue, publisher Future confirms. I'll read through this story now. Basically, Future Publishing has officially retired its UK official PlayStation Magazine, thus ending a 33-year stretch of official games publications. In a note sent to subscribers on Friday, Future said that from its next issue, OPM UK would be rebranded as Play and maintain the same editorial team. No reason was given for the change, but the rebrand suggests Future has not renewed its license with PlayStation. OPM UK was the last of the official games mags after an official Nintendo magazine was closed in October 2014, followed by the shuttering of official Xbox magazine in April 2020. Both of these magazines were also published by Future. Andy, over to you onto this news story. How do you feel about this? Obviously, this personal ties to Future with both of you.
So both me and Chris and I worked for Future for about 10 years each-ish. Mm-hmm. Chris worked for Official Nintendo Magazine and a few other publications. Obviously, I was on CVG.
Yeah.
But both of us have written for pretty much all the mags because that's what happens, when you're inside that big publisher like that. I mean, it was a fantastic time to be in the games media, which, I envy younger people now who don't get to experience that because we were basically on a floor with 5 or 6 other publications. It was like a family, right? It was an incredibly social experience, whereas now, I guess, especially during the pandemic, it's a very isolating experience writing about games. Whereas, I was on CVG with my team, sat next to Official Nintendo Mag, sat next to PC Zone, sat next to official Xbox Mag.
Yeah, and PSM were there as well, were they?
No, PSW.
PSW
were there. We had OXM1 at one point.
That's right.
I'm sure I'm missing out publications, but we're all
Total
sat there.
Film, and then Total Film.
I remember that. Am I right in saying that the Future Publishing building had the big kind of square bit in the middle when it was like a really tall building? Because I feel like I've been there years ago when I used to work in music, and I swear there was another. And it's an incredible building for what I remember. Am I thinking the wrong one?
Are you thinking of the Bath one or the London one?
London one, and it had like this. It was a really tall building. It had like almost like a square bit. That was like a big kind of foyer, like big open square in the middle.
No, building wasn't that good.
No, this.
Although I did see Terry Wogan once. That's about as exciting as a building got. Was it Terry Wogan was standing?
That's incredible, man. What more do you want than Terry Wogan? But obviously, this isn't good news. This isn't good news, is it? I mean, you don't want to see. You don't want to hope.
It is good news because the magazine continues to exist. The team's still there. They've just they've rebranded, right? I mean, it's sad that the license is gone, but again, it comes back to. It's just a badge at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, what is a name? What is a brand? But the team behind it. These guys are still there. Obviously, OXM closed quite a few years ago now. Official Nintendo Magazine closed probably around when CVG closed, so 2014, something like that.
Just before CVG, yeah.
Because the way that these work is that obviously it is a proper license. These companies will work with Future to renew the license and even have a say in what the magazine looks like and stuff like that, right? Like, I mean, obviously when Chris went over to R&M, when R&M was acquired by Future after being at EMAP for years, they were very big on having a very edge-style magazine, right? So it's very clean, lovely, beautiful layout that magazine had. So it would just be the case now that for whatever reason, they've decided not to renew it. You could speculate...
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of it will be speculation because I've seen a lot of people assuming that Future didn't renew the license, but there's every chance as well that Sony decided not to renew the license because it's a two-way thing. That was the case with O&M. Like O&M, it was Nintendo that kind of withdrew the license because at that point it was the Wii U, and the Wii U was struggling, and Nintendo had basically decided. It says it on the back page of the last issue of O&M. There's a letter by Satoru Shibata, the kind of European chap at Nintendo, and he basically said, we want to change our messaging to our Nintendo Directs and all this kind of stuff going forward, so we don't want basically to renew the magazine.
Can I just say that's really classy from Nintendo as well. Did Miyamoto do a sketch for that, or was that just
the very last page? I don't think I've got it to hand.
Was it rehashed, or was that original?
No, that was original when it was shutting down.
I know it was original because you had a cover at one point, didn't you? I think.
It was basically when it was shutting down. Chandra. No, it wasn't Chandra. Chandra was gone by that point. But we basically got in touch with Nintendo and said, because the magazine's shutting down, can you maybe get Miyamoto to maybe write something at the end to kind of end it? And he drew a picture. Mario waving, saying thank you for playing.
Yeah, that's classy as hell, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no slight on Sony, but I can't imagine Jim Ryan's writing a letter and someone's doing a picture. So that is a very, very classy way to end a magazine. But I guess the horse has bolted by this point. I mean, no offense to OPM, but obviously, even 7 years ago when O&M closed, viewership would have been a lot higher. I imagine readership. But I will say as well that the team is still there, and that's fantastic to see, because we weren't that lucky, Chris and I. The people who had it worse were OXM in London, because a lot of people talk about OXM closing in like 2016, 2017, I think it was, but actually OXM was always in London. And OXM, they were told when we were closed that they were moving it to Bath. So they actually had it worse, because we had a big outpour of kind of sympathy because we were being made redundant. But OXM from the outside wasn't closing. But, they were effectively told, do you want to move across the country or not? I mean, OXM was always in London because OPM wouldn't have it in the same building. Bit of trivia there. Because official PlayStation is like the... and Future's relationship goes back decades, right? They're synonymous with each other. I mean, they obviously launched the first official PlayStation magazine in the 90s, and at one point it was one of the most read magazines in the world. Like the readership was huge because you obviously had the demo discs and stuff like that. Like it was a really innovative, amazing magazine that's created so many careers. And that's one thing I think it is important to note, just to have some time to think about the actual staff on this. Then they have kept their jobs, obviously, which is fantastic to see. But the thing that Future's great at is giving young writers a chance. Myself included, I wouldn't have a career if it weren't for them. And I'm sure Chris is the same.
Yep, definitely.
They're a factory of amazing journalists, and I imagine there are a lot of really fantastic young writers on that magazine who, when they do decide to move on, will go on to kind of bigger and better things.
It leads nicely onto the AskVG section, because Twitter user Orange Caution wrote in basically to AskVG, which you can get your questions answered in future episodes of Off The Record, by the way, by using hashtag AskVGC. Orange Caution said, with print magazines being called left and right, what do you think the future of games journalism is? It seems like a lot of smaller independent websites are struggling to find the same viewership or engagement as the likes of IGN, but VGC seems to be the exception to the rule. I'm going to put that to Andy, because obviously Andy's the mastermind behind this whole thing, and VGC is doing very, very well. But Andy, what do you think the future of games journalism is? Because obviously it's a difficult time for print.
The future of games journalism right now is owning your niche. You're already seeing a lot of platforms, a lot of journalists doing very, very well at being specialised in a specific thing. Say, for example, there are quite a number of journalists out there now who are very specialised in Xbox, right? Yeah. They cover Xbox all day long. And you can figure out who I'm talking about, and they're incredible success because they own their niche, their audience kind of flocks to them for that expertise, and that's the way that I see it going. I mean, even in writing now, especially freelance writing, you have people who are like experienced in RPGs or experienced in like this different genre or this live service game, because games it's not like the old days where a game just comes out and that's it, right? They keep going. So you need to find people who are still playing these games and who are experts, because we're providing content for a expert audience, and you can't just make that up. You need to know your shit. So I imagine it's going to become more niche, more. Certainly in terms of the funding needs to change. Patreons and stuff like that, you're already seeing doing really, really well. People pay for the content that they want, right? I mean, you'd hope that the mainstream will start taking games more seriously. There's already a lot of kind of Broadsheets in the UK who are doing fantastic games coverage, got fantastic games writers. Like to see more of that. But journalism as a whole has been in a tough place for a while, right? It's not just games. It is journalism kind of figuring out. So that question really comes back to, it's not what's the future of games writing, it's what's the future of journalism. It's tough, right? Finding this equilibrium and what it is and where it fits in the world of influencers.
And social media as well, I guess, it's cheap watering everything down, doesn't it? And
because the one thing I'll say, right, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
The most important thing is journalism matters. There's a big, the younger audience to us, a lot of them consume their content differently, right? Through, kind of some of the channels that you do, like through YouTube and stuff, right? They're just a different audience. They just are. When I came into future publishing on CVG, I was like internet guy. But magazines were still king then. But I didn't give a shit because internet was my new thing. It's like the Bane thing from Batman, right? Like you adopted the dark, but I was born in it. Like so these kids were born on YouTube, right? Like it's tough to be like from a website writer and then go to it, but that is their thing, right? You're not going to pull them away from it.
Yeah.
But and you see a lot of like anti-games journalism stuff, like in these circles, right? Like it's just these horrible cliches about about games journalism, which is like they just fundamentally don't understand what it is. But what I will say to these people, this audience that doesn't consume content this way, is journalism is really important, even if you don't read our website, because the people you get your content from read our website. Websites like us, websites like Eurogamer, websites like Kotaku, etc., who these people might, have some sort of like trendy agenda against. They're never going to read them. They're important because these people can curate and vouch information, ask important questions. They are trained and experts in this field to vouch for info that comes out, and that feeds to all creators. Content creators read VGC every day. Right? I mean, a lot of the channels that people will watch, they will take the story from VGC. And this is not to say, I mean, there are lots of fantastic journalists who do video as well. But they're doing the same thing as us, right? And it's important that they're working, is that they are discerning this info in a way that only journalists can, because otherwise what you're going to be left with is these companies just putting out press releases and they're just being regurgitated. So even if you don't read our website or websites like us, it is important that journalists exist for that reason.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, it's been like last week was my 15th anniversary as a games journalist, and when I started, it was wildly different to the landscape. At least was wildly different to how it is now. There was no YouTube. There was barely any social media. I don't know if Twitter had started at that point. Nobody was using it yet. I don't even think it had.
Yeah,
this would have been 2006. But even back then, there was still that kind of constant, games journalists are they're this, they're that, they're corrupt, blah blah blah. They're dying out. The future is this and that. And obviously, and as YouTubers and influencers and the like have come along, you get the new arguments that games journalists are nothing. These guys are the future. And Andy's right. Younger audiences. That's what they're being raised on now, and that's what they kind of gravitate towards. But yeah, I'm just basically reiterating what Andy says, but in my own words. But yeah, we're still an extremely important part of that, whether they accept us or not.
I mean, I really like the reason I do this show, right? Is because I've been encouraged to see a lot of other great journalists, like especially someone like Jeff Grubb, or for example, who doesn't hesitate to jump on a video show. Lots of great journalists who jump on video shows and kind of embrace that audience, because I've always been a print guy, right? Like a written word guy. But they've encouraged me to do this, and I think it is important to kind of try and merge those two worlds somehow, because and stop being old men and create more accessible content, because it is better as well, right?
But at the end of the day, it's just an evolution of what magazines used to be back in the 80s and 90s. Like when you read back the old Mean Machines and stuff, and Total and magazines like that, you knew certain writers and kind of grew attached to them, say like Julian Rignall and Steve Jarrett and at the time when you bought these magazines, you felt like part of a club because you knew who these people were, and you had all the in jokes that you got from buying every issue. So it's no different. It's just a different medium, and old dicks like us just basically have to adapt to it.
It reminds me as well, because people don't know, I also make a lot of football content because I'm a big football fan. It reminds me a little bit of the evolution of fanzines as well, where fanzines used to be outside the football ground, waving a magazine.
Exactly.
Now they are on the YouTube channels like myself, and that's what they are now. It's the same thing, the fanzines, and it's obviously a different world, but it's a world that's relatively necessary, I would say, because that's the way the internet's going. But I do agree entirely with the niche thing, be it with anything, be it with games, be it football, all that kind of stuff, or whatever. The niche thing I think is really important. To be honest, it's what drew me. I was just a reader for VGC, and I got in touch with Andy saying we should do some video stuff together. But I was drawn to VGC simply because and I'm not just trying to kiss your ass, Andy, because you're on a video here, but I was really, really impressed with once again with the niche that you'd found. It was just high quality reporting, and I guess it was quite refreshing on a personal level to read just interesting stories and information as opposed to salacious details and all that kind of stuff. And personally, I found it fascinating, and there's always new ways, new niches as well to be found for pretty much anyone. And what I will see is anyone sat there, I don't know, considering a site or considering writing or whatever, there is something to be found always, and it always feels like sometimes like everything's been said or every angle's been covered. It hasn't. There's always a little creativity or finding your own angle and own view on these things that could give you a platform to because I believe in journalism as well massively. I think it's hugely important culturally, socially, and critically, and I've got an estate agent ringing me. I'm pretty certain I have now. But either way, this is a good way to end this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching the latest VGC Off The Record. It's been a pleasure chatting to Andy and Chris as always. Don't forget as well, if you like this content, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel every Friday afternoon. You can sit and watch a combination of these two faces and another one usually. These three faces and another one usually. I don't know, apparently one of us is a ghost and doesn't exist. I don't know what I'm on about there. And you can catch us on all the podcast providers as well, all the major podcast providers. If you like that kind of content, give it a little rating on your podcast provider as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Have a wonderful weekend. We've been VGC Off The Record, and I'll see you very, very soon.